So there is no special pen. I mean, these are actually my favorite pens, they're amazing. But uh, let's take this analogy and expand. If you're a graphic designer or working in branding, as I do, I think often we can get a little bit uh, locked in to the way our how we use our software, the software programs we use, our shortcuts, the correct keyboard. I'm sure you've seen a lot of people on the desk porn. A lot of people have got beautiful little clacky situations. They've all got dialed pens, specific notepads, all this kind of stuff. And this is all good, but in the productivity porn, that's the second time I've said that, it can be really distracting. And when you're working with clients, if you're starting to take on jobs where you've got to be in the room with clients, or if anything, you've got to be on a meeting and you're remote, especially, you want to get really comfortable solving problems in really, really tricky environments. So, for instance, let me unpack that. If you're on Google Slides, I'm sure anyone listening who's been in like a first stage creative, often what happens is you end up making a slide. I call it live graphic design. And you're saying, what about this? And you're drawing these horrible circles. The default circle comes in, it's like gray with a black key line. You're having to change that. People having to listen, wait for you to do that. And then you're trying to explain the idea. It's putting two shapes on top of each other to make a letter form or whatever. Or you get some feedback, and let's say your boss or your client or whoever you're talking to says like, oh, I like this stuff from this slide and this stuff from this slide. And if those two had a baby, and then you're sort of like, hey, let's do that. Let's do that now. And you take this bit and take that bit and you merge it together. You maybe do some horrible screenshot and you drop it in. Like, if you're not comfortable thinking on the fly like that, that's where I think that's where you really know that you know your craft. And it's good doing that because it definitely comes off in a meeting that you can be a bit more relaxed. I know that comes with experience. I know you got to do that. But if you only feel comfortable, let's say, when you're in Figma and you've got all of your plugins, or you're in After Effects and you've got all of your stuff, or you're on like in Illustrator or InDesign and it's your setup. Whereas if you go on someone else's computer and you get handed a computer, if this keyboard, which I hate, but it's the one I take when I go into work to freelancers. If this keyboard means that you can't work, then and you have to use a specific kind of keyboard, or it's just like you're complaining, or your certain mouse, if it's not got the angular thing and you're using a magic mouse, if this thing gets in the way, then essentially you're sort of bringing yourself out of flow state. To get really sort of, talk about the brain briefly. I only know this because my wife's pregnant. Learning a lot about the limbic system and everything else. But like, the limbic system is the lizard brain back in the day, right? So that's the stuff that happens. It just gets automated. So the frontal cortex or the neocortex or the frontal lobe, however you want to call it, that's like we think about thinking. That gives our rationalization. We can think about stuff. When the thinking brain gets in the way of the lizard brain, you can't operate, right? Think about when you're playing guitar, think about when you're having sex, think about when you're walking past somebody pretty or somebody popular. You're like you're forgetting how to actually do it. And it makes it awful, at least in my experience. And that's the similar thing if you're in a brainstorm session and you're like, you need to have the right bloody post-it notes that stick on the wall, not the shit ones that don't, because there are shit ones that don't, and it's really annoying. But if they're the only post-it notes you've got, then you got to use them. And that's a bit of a metaphor. And there is no special pen. If you can only write prose or write tweets with an ink pen, or whatever, like all these barriers just get in the way of the actual creative stuff. And that flow state, that's the thing you've been prepping for, which is solving problems, creating ideas, this plus that, this not that, this in that, this as that, this to that, all these ways of expressing the visual language and doing why we do this stuff, which is expressing and communicating via visual and the visual medium. If we're worrying about the bloody keyboard, then it's going to get in the way. So yeah, if you want to be tactical, a couple of things. Try and get comfortable using PowerPoint, especially on a call. People still use PowerPoint. I literally worked at an agency last week that everything is integrated into PowerPoint via Teams. Horrible, but you have to do it. Get used to working in Keynote. I built a thing in Keynote, and it was sort of the thing that we were showing client because there just wasn't time for me to build it out in any kind of other software. Get used to scribbles. Get used to things that are out of your comfort zone from a way of communicating your idea. Because when someone sees you do that, they know you've done it before, and that's a good competency play. They know that you know your stuff because you're comfortable in that medium. People can switch it up and you're on board. And two, all those things will be true because you genuinely will feel a lot more comfortable and a lot more confident. And I would say, rather than jumping in a cold plunge for 20 minutes, you'll be closer to flow state than any of that bullshit. Although, sorry, I'm sure it's not bullshit, but also bullshit. There is no special pen. There is no spoon. That's the reference I'm talking about. The Matrix. Everything leads back to the Matrix.